Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.
Hello and welcome to the Smells Like Infinite Sadness podcast. I'm your host, Michael Taylor. For those of you who don't know, I run the website, smellslikeinfinitesadness.com. It's a blog covering the best alternative rock from the 80s and 90s up to present day. I'm a proud middle-aged Gen Xer who is still obsessed with the music of his youth and loves to talk about it. Today I'll be speaking to special guest, legendary guitarist, producer, sonic architect, and family member of the Butthole Surfers, Paul Leary. We're talking about the long-lost Butthole Surfers album After the Astronaut, originally recorded in the late 90s after the breakout success of the album Electric Larryland and their hit single Pepper. But After the Astronaut was only to be shelved by Capitol Records at the last minute for not being deemed commercial enough. Now, though, nearly 3 decades later, the album is finally being released as originally intended through Sunset Blvd Records on June 26th. In this conversation, Paul talks about the album's strange journey from rejected major label release to cult mythology, the band's dive into electronics, industrial textures, and experimental collage-style songwriting, their Texas roots, and why After the Astronaut may actually represent the purest continuation of the Surfers' creative instincts. We also discuss a surreal moment when one of America's weirdest underground bands unexpectedly scored a mainstream hit with Pepper, why the 90s briefly embraced experimental music, recording techniques, political themes running through the band's work, the status of new music and touring, and the long-awaited documentary, The Butthole Surfers, The Whole Truth and Nothing But. So here's my conversation with Paul Leary. Thanks for taking the time out to talk to me today. I really appreciate it. I've been excited to talk to you. I got a preview copy, a stream of the new album, and I've really been enjoying it. It's been really, really cool to listen to it. And I guess what I'm wondering is, this has been a really long road for being recorded by Capitol Records in 1998, and you reworked it in Hollywood Records. So why was this journey so difficult, do you think, and why revisit it now? Was it like a rights issue that you finally got the rights back? Is that why you decided to release it now? Or
Well, we had the album recorded for Capitol Records in 98 or whatever year that was. And then our manager at the time went back to using heroin, and our our relationship with Capitol immediately went into the toilet, and they dropped us. They didn't really drop us so much as they just didn't put out our album the way we made it. And even though they'd already printed up promo copies and sent them out to the press and all that kind of stuff, they just folded tent on us, and they kind of left us in limbo for a couple of years. We couldn't do anything because they still owed us, but they weren't going to put us out. And eventually Hollywood Records bought the rights to that album, but they wanted a different spin on the album. They wanted to change up some songs and leave some songs off and add more songs. And so we went along with that. We had to. It was a very painful process because we had already had the album that we wanted. And, reworking it was just a drag. And then I never cared too much for the product that came out of it. It was called Weird Revolution. And so I tried to just put it out of my head. Years go by, and I'm going through my storage shed, and I run across the old 2-inch multi-track recordings of that album from Capitol before it was changed, and got to thinking, wow, I could just remix this and get it the way it was originally, and maybe we could put it out. And I contacted the Hollywood Records, and much to their credit, they allowed us to put the album out. And so here we are. It's getting ready to come out in June.
So I think what surprised me for listening to the album a few times, it's interesting because songs like Weird Revolution or Intelligent Guy, they came in, all the songs still feel kind of like a continuation of the electronic experimentation that you did that resulted in Pepper, which was a hit for y'all. So was it weird to you that they weren't supportive of that, given that kind of was a big breakthrough for you in terms of, getting some sort of mainstream success?
When you say they, are you talking about Capitol?
Yes, Capitol.
They were supportive. They liked the album. They were ready to put it out. And like I said, they'd printed up promo copies. We were getting ready to go to town again. And then our manager at the time who was a recovering drug addict and hadn't done drugs for years, started using drugs again, and things went south with the label really quick. It had nothing to do with whether Capitol liked the record or not. It was just a matter of all of a sudden we had bad management, and Capitol didn't want to deal with it, and they got other things they can do besides fuck around with the Butthole Surfers. Yeah, the other thing is that the president of Capitol that signed us, his name was Hale Milgram, and he was a real music guy, and he loved the Butthole Surfers. He came to our shows in New York, and just was a total joy to work with. And then he got fired, and Capitol hired Gary Gersh, who was riding on the high from Nirvana. I think he was the head of Geffen before Capitol.
Oh, okay.
And Gary Gersh was not into the Butthole Surfers so much. When he was with Geffen, we tried to sign with Geffen, and Gary Gersh was like, "No, I already have Sonic Youth. What do I need with the Butthole Surfers?" So Gary wasn't really into us, and so I think he was kind of glad to see us go. When that album that Pepper was on went gold, it was a big deal for us, and then Gary Gersh invited us to his office at the Capitol building to go in and celebrate going gold. And so we all went to his office, and he kept us waiting outside his office for 45 minutes. And then we finally go in there, and then it's like a meeting he was having, and there was probably 30 people in his office. And so we walk in there, and we're like the odd ducks in the room. It was just weird. All these, industry people, and then there's us, and we are definitely not industry type people. And I feel it a little weird. And then after a while, Gary Gersh walks up to me, and he's like, "Hey, I just wanted to let you know that I really respect what you do." And I was like, "Wow, cool." I thought he didn't like us, and there he was telling me that he respects what I do. And so I was feeling pretty good. And then 5 minutes later, he walks up to me again and goes, "Hi, I'm Gary Gersh. I just want you to know I really respect what you do."
Oh, no.
Okay, I get it now. So anyway, I'm really excited that the album, the way we wanted it to come out, is finally coming out all these years later. And who knows if there'll ever be another Butthole Surfer release? But this is probably the end of the road for us, and so I'm really happy about it that it could happen.
Well, given that, and the title track, Imbuya, Yentil, those are just a few I noticed that feel almost like sonic collages, the way you kind of layered electronic music with like some world music, samples, and things like that. When you were making those songs, did you change your creative process for that, or was it kind of the way you guys always write, or how did that factor in as far as going that direction?
We recorded records in different ways. At one point in our career, we would practice our songs, and then we'd go into the studio and then record them. And then after we had built our own recording studio, we would just mess around in the studio, and we would just roll tape, and then whatever the tape recorded is what we'd have for an album. I think that's how we came up with Locust Abortion Technician. And then for Pepper, what was the name of that album that it was on? I can't even remember.
What's Electric Larryland? Was that
Electric Larryland. We had all our songs planned out and rehearsed, and we went into a studio with Steve Thompson producing, and we thought we had everything there, and then towards the end of pre-production, Steve goes, I think we need one more song, and we were all like, "I don't think so. I think we got it." And he's like, "No, we need one more song." And we were in like a recording studio out at it was Bearsville in somewhere in New York. I forget where that is. Bearsville, New York. Was that a city or?
I'm not sure.
Anyway, there was it was a recording studio, and there was the means to record stuff. And so he goes, "Well, let's record something right now." And he told me to play a guitar riff, and I was like, "Okay, what key should I play?" And he goes, "G." So I played the riff that started the song Pepper, and then they messed around with it and put drum loops down to it, and then Gibby spent time with it in another room coming up with lyrics. So that was the only song we did like that. Everything else was all planned out, but Pepper was assembled. And we came home, and by that point we finally had our own places to live. We'd been living together for a very long time, and we were very happy to have our own homes to live in. And so we would, we would sit at home and come up with loops and this and that and entire guitar parts. I recorded lots of guitars, and then we took it all to Arlen's studio in Austin, Texas, and put it together on tape with engineer Stuart Sullivan. And then Gibby started singing, and we started just doing the things we do in the studio, just goofing off and recording it. And that was a lot of fun. It was as much fun to make as Weird Revolution was not fun to make.
Well, going back to Pepper really quick, I was just kind of curious, because when you all started out, you're so anarchic and everything, and the Butthole Surfers, the name and everything, people were just kind of like, you really were like I grew up in Central Texas. I grew up in Fort Worth. So I had a friend of mine who bought one of your vinyl records to school when I was like, I don't know, 15 or 16. I was like, what the hell is this? I was like, my mind was melted. So it kind of blew my mind when like you all had a kind of a mainstream hit. Was that a surprise to you, or did you kind of feel like, no, this has the makings of a hit when you were writing it?
I never really thought about that. I was still I was still getting over the fact that we were signed to Capitol Records. The previous record, we were on Capitol and got to work with John Paul Jones producing. And so by that point, I just felt like I was on a permanent episode of Candid Camera. And eventually somebody was going to, pop out from behind a bush and say, "Smile, you're on Candid Camera. This whole thing has been a joke." I mean, it just, the whole experience was surreal. I mean, we were the Butthole Surfers, and we were just awful, and we had all the bedlam at shows and did the stupidest stuff, and ended up getting signed to a major label and working with heroes of rock music, and it was just very surreal. And then to have it come crashing down when our manager went back to doing Dope, there's the searing highs and the crashing lows, and that was definitely the crashing low for us. But we survived because we kind of had to.
Well, I mean, it seemed like the '90s was like kind of like the one time where the underground, crept up into like a mainstream. It was a very interesting, like really odd, interesting stuff was popular for a short time. And you were mentioning your manager issue, but it seemed like kind of towards the end of the '90s that it all kind of started slipping away. Did you get that sense that it was just kind of not meant to be? I guess the alternative scene as it was not long to last. And do you have any theories as to why? Or
I think rap music kind of came along and killed the beast, which is, that's what happens in music. Something's popular and then people get tired of it, and then something else comes along and it's big. And rap and hip hop, wow, those genres have really had some legs. That stuff's never going out of style. But yeah, rock music took a hit, and then at the same time there was this outfit called Napster. I don't know if you remember that.
Oh yeah.
When all of a sudden it was like, music should be free, and it's like, yeah, so should my lawyer. And that man, that really killed music to a big way. Like around the turn of the century. I know, like, I did a Sublime. I produced a Sublime album, and I can remember that came out in the same year as Electric Larryland and Pepper, and that record did great, and I got a big old fat royalty check, and then Napster came along, and next thing you know, those royalty checks were just gone, and I was close to. I almost had to, declare bankruptcy, and it was a miserable time, and eventually they figured out streaming, and now all that's come back, and so everything's all comfortable and cozy again, but only if you have a whole lot of streams.
Yeah.
Apparently they have a different pay scale for people that stream a lot, and I know, like, Santeria from Sublime has over a billion streams on Spotify alone, and so that's been real good. That made life a whole lot easier for me.
Well, I remember reading an article with you, I think it was in Guitar World, like way back when, where I think you said when you were producing albums that you changed the strings on the guitars like almost like every day or something. Am I remembering that right?
Oh,
or like you
absolutely.
you feel it?
No, I was obsessive about changing guitar strings. I changed them every day for shows, and the studio. I always wanted fresh strings. I wanted everything as good as it could possibly be, and then I wanted them in tune. So I'd hire people that were good at tuning, and would always keep things. It seemed like that was half my job, was keeping the band in tune. So,
Well, you mentioned streaming and all that. Do you think? I mean, it seems to me like for a while the idea of being able to put out your own stuff, and after the music industry kind of collapsed, that was kind of like a great thing for. Oh, I have a kitty cat too. But it seemed like it was such a cool like time for people to put out music on their own websites and all that. Did you see any benefit from that, or did you really miss the days of like record label support as far as what your preferred method was for getting your music out there?
oh gosh, I missed the big budgets. Once the turn of the century came, all of a sudden, it went from $250,000 and $350,000 recording budgets to, $10,000 recording budgets, and everybody's recording at home, and recording studios are going out of business, and that was kind of sad because I love recording studios, and they're still struggling to this day. But
Yeah.
home recording is great. That's Milo, by the way.
Oh, hello, Milo. I've got a 19-year-old cat hanging out on my bed right now. He's hanging in there. So
An elder statesman.
yeah. So I'm counting on making it to his 20th birthday. I got my fingers crossed. But
I'll keep my fingers crossed for you. What's his name?
Ziggy.
Ziggy. All right. Well, Milo's. It's dinner time for Milo. I forgot to give him dinner before this podcast, so he's going to be a pest until he gets dinner.
Okay. Well, I won't take up too much.
I've even got his picture on my coffee mug here.
That's awesome. Well, I was thinking, listening to the new album and being like, wow, some new music from you guys, even though it's not technically new to my ears. And then I was thinking about being in high school and my friend bringing like your records to school and listening to that and how during the 80s, it was just so conservative and such a drag living like in Texas during that time because it was so like uptight and the whole like religious right and everything. And then I think about now and I'm like, it seems like it's so much worse than I was.
It is worse. I mean, back in the 80s, wasn't that when we had a Democratic governor, Ann Richards?
Yeah.
That was pretty cool. I miss her.
Yeah, I do too. Did you ever imagine things would be this crazy? And does that ever give you any kind of impetus? You said that this may be kind of the end of the Butthole Surfers, but do you feel compelled at all to be engaged politically through music or to make some kind of statement about that? Or are you just kind of like, yeah, I'm...
No, I mean, everybody's already doing that. And, we were more about art than politics and just being dada and making no sense and trying to make sense from things that make no sense. We came up with an album title by throwing a dirty sock at a keyboard one time, and that was just. Well, I like songs about nothing and everything, so there's enough people doing politics.
Yeah. Will there be any plans at all to tour for this album, or?
No, but we do have a documentary film coming out this summer.
I was going to ask you about that. I was just here to ask you about that because my friend saw it at South by Southwest last year. And he was like saying it's the most amazing music documentary he's ever seen. I've been so excited about it, and I wasn't sure when it was coming out. So I'm glad you brought that up.
This summer, I'm waiting on some news coming next week for what that's going to be. I know it's going to get at least a limited theatrical release, and then I don't know what the streaming situation is going to be. But it's been 5 years in the making, and I'm actually really proud of how it turned out. We we didn't hire. We worked with the right director, Tom Stern, who we've known since the 80s. Back in the 80s, he did a video of us. I think it's called like Coming to Texas or something. You can see it on YouTube, and it's a scene where actor John Hawkes is playing a husband, and he's driving his family through Texas and the car breaks down, or they pull over to stop someplace and they're the Butthole Surfers, and he gets out and we kidnap his kid and barbecue him and serve it up to the parents as a meal. And it's really stupid. And that Tom Stern made that film with Alex Winter, and it was sort of supposed to be a trailer. They were going to pitch it to Fox or somebody to make a full length feature movie, and Fox picked it up, and they signed up for the movie. But then, as soon as the ink was dried on the contract, they immediately kicked the butthole. It was supposed to star the Butthole Surfers, and we got kicked out of the movie and replaced with Keanu Reeves and Mr. T and Brooke Shields and Randy Quaid. It was an all-star cast. And I think that's been released recently. I think you can stream that somewhere, but it's a pretty funny movie. So Tom Stern did that. He's really good with kind of slapstick humor. And while the Butthole Surfers is not a real slapstick humor story, there are elements of it to it, and the editing and everything is really, really told the story really well. And it starts out, it's a lot of fun, and there's just crazy moments, and then towards the end it gets really sad. So you laugh, you cry, you kiss $5 goodbye.
Well, I remember I was looking on YouTube, I guess last year, and I saw that trailer pop up. I looked at my wife. I'm like, we got to watch this. This looks so good. I was like really excited by it. When my friend told me about it, I was like, oh my God, I got to watch this documentary. So I'm glad it's coming out. So I finally get to see it.
Yeah. You remember Rob Reiner?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
That was the last movie he watched.
Oh my God.
Yeah. The investor, Derek Rossi, is good friends of Rob Reiner, and he's also an investor in Castle Rock. And he finally got Rob Reiner to watch the movie. He sent the movie to him to watch, and he watched it with his wife. And on the day that they were murdered, and they called up Derek to tell him how much they loved the movie, and Derek was out, and so it went to voicemail, and it's Rob Reiner and his wife going on and on about how they love the documentary and how great it is and how it's one of the best music documentaries ever, and that would have been just awesome. Except then later that night, tragedy struck. So
that was one of the most disturbing stories I'd heard in a while. Because I was so enamored of some of his films. He made some of the best comedies and other films too. And I was devastating. It's so messed up.
Spinal Tap 2 and hadn't been out all that long.
Yeah. And it was better than I thought it was going to be. So
same here. I like the way they didn't try to recreate the first version. It's kind of got its own slant, and so I was happy for that.
Yeah, just a tragic end to that. But so I know that you've talked about no plans for touring. You're doing the documentaries. Is there anything else that you're working on, like any either solo projects, or you're producing anything, or anything coming down the pipeline?
No, not really. I'm trying to ease out of working, and just spend time riding my bicycle and hanging out with my wife and my cat. And I love having a home and a place to be. I'd always dreamed of the life that I have now, and so I'm just really enjoying it.
Good. Well, after the roller coaster ride you've been through, you definitely deserve it. I mean, I think the Butthole Surfers were especially growing up in Texas, but it was such a, like you said, such a kind of a crazy ride, but you made such really interesting and eclectic music that I'm glad that you're getting, some exposure to the documentary and getting, the acclaim that y'all deserve.
We came along at the right time. The 80s was the right time to do Butthole Surfers, because you could make a record and you could print up some T-shirts and you could go on the road and make enough money to get beer and pot and gas to the next town. And I don't know how bands make it today, but I wouldn't want to have to be trying to do it again in this environment. But
yeah. I think now's got to be one of the most challenging times to be a musician, unless you're some pop star, which is it's all written for you. So it's challenging. Well, I best of luck with the new album. I'm glad it's finally seen the light of day, and look forward to seeing the documentary. And just thanks so much for taking the time out today, Paul. I appreciate it. It's a pleasure.
Well, thanks for talking to me. I enjoyed it.
All right. Thank you so much. That was Paul Leary, the Butthole Surfers. Many thanks for taking the time to talk to me today. The band's album After the Astronaut arrives June 26th via Sunset Blvd Records, finally giving fans a chance to hear the album that the band originally intended before it was shelved in the late 90s. If you're a longtime Surfers fan or just interested in hearing a band push deeper into experimentation instead of chasing trends, it's definitely worth checking out. The band's documentary will be out this summer, so stay tuned for details on that. And thank you for listening. If you enjoyed the episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it around. As always, we'll see you next time, so stay safe and stay sane. And we're going to close with a track off After the Astronaut and Booyah. So check it out, give it a listen, and we'll see you next time.
Free audio post-production by alphonic.com.